Hey guys, Drifter here. In case you haven't heard, Delta Force Hawk Ops is back for another free-to-play weekend, this time in beta instead of alpha, and it should still be live at the time I upload this video, unless of course production is a little bit slow. You should just be able to download it on console or on Steam for free, and I wanted to talk about it because I had a tremendous amount of fun playing the alpha, and immediately got back on to play the beta when it came out, and unsurprisingly, had a fantastic time playing the beta too. As you can tell from the gameplay, this could easily be a sequel to Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4, and in certain ways it even reminds me of Battlefield 1 if perhaps it were a modern game. And I think that EA should be very, very concerned because Delta Force is legitimately a better Battlefield than the actual Battlefield options that we have out right now. And if Delta Force Hawk Ops ever decides to do a 6v6 mode or smaller 12v12 mode, then I think Call of Duty should be a little bit concerned as well, because while this game specializes in large-scale combat, the small-scale combat and basic combat loop and gunplay and mechanics themselves are all very tight, and it feels good just 1v1ing somebody. Unfortunately, we do have some negatives. It's almost like a little re-review. The beta was a slightly worse experience than the alpha for me in a couple of nitpicky ways, but I will say that the overall gameplay experience was still excellent. So today I'm going to take a minute to talk about a few things in the Hawk Ops beta that I did not like and a few changes that I noticed, and then of course we're going to talk a lot more about the positives of the game. So right off the rip, I noticed that the ability seemed weaker, and I say seemed because, you know, for the former in-depth guy, I did not read patch notes, so this is a purely subjective opinion based on my memory of how it was last time, but it seemed that player abilities were considerably weaker in this recent build. I noticed a longer cooldown on the more impactful abilities. The cooldown does not reset upon death, though I don't think it did before, and the lethal abilities, especially on the Assault class, which I mostly played, seem to be a little bit less lethal, and I say this in the bad section, but I'm not even sure that it's a bad thing because you don't want a lot of ability spam in a large player count game like this. You don't want a game where everybody has a bunch of insta-kill, free grenades, and, you know, pings and radars and crazy stuff going on to the point where it's just overwhelming. But I will say the longer cooldowns and overall less lethality did make it harder for me and my teammates to both coordinate and push through some really nasty choke points. Moving along, I want to talk about vehicles because subjectively there appeared to be more vehicles on the map and they were much more difficult to deal with in the beta as compared to the alpha. I don't think that they changed the spawn rates or damage or health of the vehicles very much. However, given that this is a beta and people have been playing the alpha a lot, there has been a lot more interest in the vehicles. Players are gravitating toward them more, they're spawning in them more, they have a lot more experience with the vehicles, which makes them a lot more deadly. Not everybody's like me going to slam a helicopter into a ground the moment they touch it. And I ran into a lot of teams doing the old Battlefield tank and engineer combo, where you would have an engineer stand behind the tank and pretty much constantly use their ability to repair it. So all of the infantry guys trying to deal with it with their little hand launchers had to use triple the ammo to take it down because it's constantly being repaired, which is a little annoying. And I can appreciate that there is an anti-vehicle class and that most of the other classes have some kind of anti-vehicle ability. There's less vehicles than there are in Battlefield still, but there felt like there was more here in the beta and they were more oppressive than they were in the alpha. So I kind of hope they scale back the vehicles very slightly. That should be a less frequent focus of combat than what we currently have going on the map, because I think the game is just genuinely better when there are less vehicles on the map. Moving along, there were some team balancing issues, and some of this is me just being a boomer gamer. I don't think that the game has any kind of skill-based matchmaking, and I also don't think it has any kind of team balancing, at least not that I was able to notice or that anybody has made me aware of. And a lot of you say this is a good thing. That's great. We'll just get random lobbies. It can also be a bad thing when the lobbies get very lopsided. This is a problem a little bit unique to Battlefield, but it shows up in Delta Force Hawk Ops too, because when roughly 2/3 of your team have a KD of about 0.25, the enemies are just farming streaks, and it is impossible to push or hold or do anything in a large combat game like this. Then again, I used to complain when Battlefield would auto-swap me to balance out the teams and kind of undo the work I was doing. Like Battlefield, Delta Force Hawk Ops is better when the matches are close, but since it doesn't appear to be skill matching or balancing, that happens in random intervals, so much like Battlefield, your fun is going to vary wildly from match to match. And the final negative thing that I have to complain about with the beta is an optimization problem. The frame rate and visuals are fantastic. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I have a more specific nitpicky optimization problem that I did not like, which is that the developers seem to have nerfed playing in windowed mode and also playing in borderless windowed mode. I cannot change my resolutions in windowed, borderless windowed, or full screen. The game on my computer just determined its own resolution, and that's what it was going to be. If I did full screen, it was 1440p. Anything else, I think I did, no, actually it was 1440p in full screen, 1440 in borderless windowed mode. But when I went regular windowed mode, for some reason it swapped to 4K output in a tiny box, so that was kind of goofy. The game also defaulted to a monitor that wasn't even plugged in. I had a difficult time changing that, and all of the screen size changing shenanigans kind of glitched out my OBS game capture. And I wasn't just changing resolutions while capturing, it just didn't seem to want to capture the right resolution. And this might be a gripe unique to me, but I do prefer to be able to customize my game and put it in the mode that I want to play in. And I prefer to play in windowed mode, or at least borderless windowed mode, on the bed PC where I lay down and game and stream for, longer appearances than what we have for a commentary video. I like to play in 1080p, a little window. I know that's not optimal, but it helps me keep my Twitch chat and my OBS and other things going on the side of the monitor, because the bed rig is it's a one monitor setup, right? I'm not sure why they gutted all of the settings for borderless windowed and regular windowed and changing my resolution when all of that worked fine in the alpha. I will say that this cluster of settings is generally the redheaded stepchild of PC game settings, though. I don't know what, actually I do know, but it just frustrates me. Developers love to default to just full screen. Just full screen. And I get that's more efficient and the frames are better and there's some good things you can do. The problem becomes when I want to tab out to Discord or OBS or do anything else on my computer, it kind of spazzes out a little bit. It's a little bit harder to get out of full screen. I can't access anything else, and that's kind of frustrating. But before we move on to the good stuff, I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to a sponsor, which is Logitech G. I actually used their new Pro 2 mouse to capture gameplay for this video. It looks like the same color mouse, but it's not. For a very long time in the Drifter household, I've been a big fan of the Pro X Superlight mouse, which I'm trying to hold up to the camera right here. In terms of form factor, it's nearly identical to the Pro. The Pro is ambidextrous because it has a second set of buttons. It picks up a little bit of weight. It's not the Superlight, but I do have extra buttons that I can bind to the mouse for extra abilities. When it comes to gaming on PC and you're looking for mice, Logitech G, genuinely top of their class. Faster than wired light speed communication, 100-hour battery life, it's 96 technically, great form factor, great precision, love these little mice. If you're interested, you can check them out down there below. Code DRIFT will get you 5% off. And now let's move on to the good stuff. One of the things I noticed more in the beta than the alpha is that the unlock system is quite good. I was initially off-put by the outrageous amount of stuff that you have to unlock, and most weapons have, kind of 70 to 100 levels to them, but you earn these levels very quickly, and you earn them simply through experience, playing the game. Even if you capture an objective, that counts as part of your weapon XP. There's no goofy challenges, no daily challenges, no specific things you have to do in order to unlock attachments. You just play the game and get the attachments. There are challenges in the game. There's events, there's battle pass stuff, there's like Call of Duty boot camp kind of stuff, all of which will, not all, but most of which will grant you XP tokens, and you can spend those XP tokens to level up your weapons, and the system is very generous. I was pleasantly surprised to be able to take my AK-12, which is mostly what you've seen here in the video, and go from level 0 to level 15 by only using a tiny fraction of my tokens. If I wanted to fully level that gun up to, I believe it was 77 in this game, I'd probably only have to use about a quarter of the tokens that I got just from doing a few of the basic things in the boot camp. So it's very easy to level the weapons. It's also kind of nice that every single gun you unlock comes with a basic set of attachments, a couple of really basic sights, really basic grips and stocks, and, suppressor, flash hider, stuff like that. Not a lot of the good stuff. A lot of the good stuff you get later, but a lot of the functional stuff. You're not going to be stuck with iron sights and no attachments. Your gun is never going to be truly naked unless you want it to be, in which case that's your choice. On the topic of guns, they didn't change anything from the alpha. I had a lot of good things to say about it. Fluidity of combat in close quarters was fantastic. The overall combat loop was great. Handling of weapons, movement. The game felt very tight, very polished. Character movement was very reasonable. You could mantle some, you could climb ladders, you could parachute, you could still do Call of Duty knee slides into your enemies, but you take a pretty big hipfire penalty for that. Generally speaking, rushing into enemies Call of Duty style is a bad idea in this game. Most aspects of Delta Force Hawk Ops play more conservatively, even outside of the extraction mode. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. There are a couple of characters that you can choose from that have speedier abilities, and you can customize your weapons. Again, with 77 attachments, you can make some of these weapons very, very snappy and COD-like. You can even calibrate them like you could in Modern Warfare 2, so you can make them outrageously fast or tweak certain settings for certain little micro optimizations or whatever. And there were some guys in some of the matches that I were playing in that just had their SMGs fully leveled and kitted out. They were playing the close quarters class. They were scooting around, playing like a bunch of little fast goblins. But I'm happy that the game allows them to do that. They're pretty much useless at long range, but that's, you know, fair. And I think that the scale of the combat in the game is truly spectacular, but slightly less than Battlefield in a good way. The maps seem technically a little bit smaller than Battlefield, and Battlefield has kind of prided itself on its bigness over time, or largeness. Using the small words, big. But that's okay, because it keeps the fighting in more centralized areas. It kind of reminds me more of the scale of like Battlefield 3, or maybe just a little bit smaller than Battlefield 3, but I'm totally here for that. I don't need Battle Royale-sized maps for multiplayer, keeping the fighting hot, heavy, focused, most people pushing for the same objectives. That really works for me. And finally, in the good section, I want to talk about graphics and optimization. I complained about the windowed versus full screen mode, but generally speaking, Delta Force Hawk Ops is very well optimized on PC. Unlike the majority of the games I've been reviewing lately, the majority of the games I've been reviewing are not well optimized for PC, or really for anything. Delta Force Hawk Ops runs great. As I've said in other videos, the bed streaming PC is a low-cost build. It's a 3070 Ti. It has an i7 processor. However, my budget build can run Delta Force Hawk Ops in medium settings at 1440p, maintaining around 100 FPS with no meaningful stutters, while streaming to Twitch and while running a second totally different encoder to capture gameplay without like my webcam stamped on it. And that's basically double encoding and running the game at the same time on a budget build. I put it in medium settings to save frame rate. I think during the alpha I wasn't streaming, I was just capturing, so we kept it higher. But it had no meaningful stutters, no crashes, no major frame rate dips, nothing that really took me out of the game. Sometimes the servers would lag a little bit, but I'm not super worried about that. And I know that I'm not playing on the greatest gaming PC and that I'm doing some stuff with OBS that bogs it down. But again, I want to emphasize that even doing that suboptimal setup, Delta Force Hawk Ops ran great, and I'm very happy about that. If I didn't want to record or stream anything and just play by myself, maybe just make it a proper full screen and skip all this bordered windowed mode, I could almost certainly get 120 FPS at 1440p and not have to worry about it. So very happy with the optimization. And yeah, this is like a little mini review, like a little update review. I just wanted to talk about the game because I had a lot of fun playing it. I don't know if this game is going to have legs. I don't know what its long-term plans or monetization or any of that kind of stuff is. I'm literally kind of on a rock, under a rock. I just boot up game, play game. Is game fun? Yes or no? A lot of the other marketing materials I don't engage with. But I do hope that it has legs. I hope that it succeeds because the gameplay is very fun. And I don't know if this will be my main game, but it's certainly fun. And it's something that I would like to come back and visit from time to time. So hope Delta Force Hawk Ops does well. I hope that I can get this video done in time for you to see it and download the free beta. I'm very slow on production these days, so hopefully I'm not posting this when the beta ends. But if that is the case, at least I think the full game is going to be great. That's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.